been here at Purdue, been involved at home in my county, as well as at the state level. And I'm really excited to work in this position, hopefully can lead this group and we have a successful year, and I think we will. So, John?
Hello, I'm John Beale. I'm a junior in farm management, and I am really excited to be on or VP for Farm Bureau. Sorry, really glad we're still be able to meet and have a great panel later tonight, and hope we have some good questions.
Hi everyone, I'm Hannah Walker. I'm this year's Secretary Treasurer. I am a junior studying agriculture communications with a minor in political science. I'm really excited for this year and also super excited for our panel tonight. So I'm glad everyone could join us.
Hi everyone, my name is Brooke Luking and I currently serve as our Public Relations Chair. I am currently a sophomore, double majoring in agriculture communications and agribusiness marketing. And I'm so excited that you all could join us tonight.
Hello, everyone. First of all, thank you so much for being here. We're really excited to have some American Farm Bureau professionals with us today and to get meetings started for the new year. My name is Grace Hassler. I'm a double major in ag economics and ag communication. And this year I'll be serving as the policy chair. We're hoping to have more opportunities throughout the year for us to explore policy, explore some of the programs that Farm Bureau can offer. And we're really looking forward to a good year.
Hi everyone, I'm so glad you could all join us. I'm your Ag Council representative for this school year. This is my first year at Purdue and I'm double majoring in agribusiness and ag education.
All righty. Well, thank you to the officer team for introducing themselves. Now I'll have our advisors go ahead and introduce themselves.
My name is Tyson Mcfall Wonkat. I am an advisor over in engineering currently, but I got my bachelor's from agriculture economics and my master's in management. And so I've been helping you and advising you guys for 3 or 4 years now. So it's been really fun.
Hi, I'm Becca Bonnell. I'm the Youth Engagement Coordinator for Indiana Farm Bureau. So I work specifically with all of our Collegiate Farm Bureau chapters around the state, our scholarships, and then our partnerships and relationship with Indiana 4-H and Indiana FFA, as well as National FFA. So I'm a Purdue grad, so I'm happy to be on our call today, Boiler Up. If you ever have any questions or want more resources about Farm Bureau and things other than Collegiate Farm Bureau, I'm happy to be that resource for you. So don't hesitate to reach out, and I'm looking forward to the year.
Thank you, everybody, for offering your introductions. Again, if anybody membership-wise, if anybody has any questions, you can let any of us know. Feel free to ask us anything about the chapter or what the future is going to hold for the chapter as Farm Bureau at the collegiate level or state level, either way. So now we are going to go ahead and move into our panel. I know we're all really excited about this. I'm going to let Grace and Hannah kind of take over the logistics of this. So I really want everybody to thank them. They've put a lot of work into setting this up for us. But like I said, I'm going to let them kind of take over the logistics.
Awesome. Thank you, Justin. So tonight for our panel, Careers in COVID, an American Farm Bureau panel, we're so excited to be joined by Shelby Myers, David Townsend, and Allison Crittenden. All three work for American Farm Bureau Federation. So Justin, if you want to stop sharing your screen. And then I would just ask that if you're not a panelist, you would turn off your camera during the panel. Thank you very much. And now we're just going to share a little bit about each of our panelists. They've each provided us with a biography, so you guys can get to know them a little more before we get started. So we'll go ahead and start with Shelby Myers. Shelby Myers is an economist at the American Farm Bureau Federation with a focus on crop markets, farm policy, and sustainability markets. She and the rest of the economics team are responsible for tracking markets and examining the impact of various legislative and regulatory initiatives on agriculture. Shelby earned her bachelor's and master's degree in agricultural economics from Purdue University with a research emphasis on agriculture policy and a thesis analyzing the Farm Bill. Before joining AFBF, Shelby spent 4 years on the public policy team at Indiana Farm Bureau and had internship experiences with Purdue Extension and the National Council of Farmer Cooperatives. In September of 2019, Shelby was appointed by USDA Secretary Sonny Perdue to serve on the USDA Advisory Committee on Beginning Farmers and Ranchers, and she is currently the vice chair. She additionally serves as advisor for her sorority, Sigma Kappa at Purdue University, and as a 4-H volunteer following her participation as a 10-year member. Though currently living in Washington, D.C., Shelby and her husband Isaac are still engaged on the family farm in New Richmond, Indiana, where they raise corn and soybeans with beef cattle and custom sweet corn for a local distillery. And Grace,
The next panelist we're going to introduce is David Townsend. David is a project coordinator for the American Farm Bureau Federation and works with young farmers and ranchers, which we know as Yfnr, and he also does Collegiate Farm Bureau programming. He's originally from Townsend, Delaware, and he earned his Bachelor's of Science in Plant Science at the University of Delaware. While in school, he completed internships at Purdue Agribusiness, Delaware Farm Bureau Foundation, and the USDA, as well as working at U Dairy Creamery in the on-campus produce farm. When he's not working, David spends his time hiking, reading, watching Survivor, and spending time with his family.
And finally, we have Allison Crittenden. Allison Crittenden serves as the American Farm Bureau Federation's Director of Congressional Relations. Her issue portfolio encompasses farm labor and specialty crops. Allison's work focuses on specific issues such as immigration, pesticides, and food safety. Alice came to the American Farm Bureau Federation in March 2019. Prior to her time at AFBF, she was a senior legislative assistant for Representative Rick Crawford, where she handled his agriculture, trade, energy, natural resources, judiciary, and environmental issues. Allison worked alongside Representative Crawford throughout the negotiations of the 2018 Farm Bill, including his work as a member of the Farm Bill Conference Committee. Previously, she worked at the Russell Group, a lobbying and government relations firm that specializes in serving clients in the food and agriculture industry. Allison was raised on her family's third-generation fruit and vegetable farm in Deltaville, Virginia, where they grow cantaloupes, peppers, and cucumbers to be sold commercially to grocery stores throughout the East Coast. Allison graduated from Virginia Tech with a degree in applied economic management and lives in Washington, D.C.
So it's great to have a little introduction of each of you, but to get started, each of you just give us a little bit about how you got to your role at Farm Bureau and what you do in that role currently. David, do you want to start us off?
Absolutely. So I started at Farm Bureau in September of 2019. So I'm a fairly recent add-in. And I came there after graduating from University of Delaware. And we're the Fightin' Blue Hens. So that's a good fun fact for you to start us off, of an odd mascot for sure. Allison, I think we kind of have the bird thing going on with our mascots, but I think Blue Hens might take the cake. But yeah, I didn't have a job after college. After having all these internships, I didn't have something right after the spring semester, which was actually pretty disappointing, but ended up having an internship with Delaware Department of Agriculture and had the chance to spend an entire summer applying for jobs, figuring out what I wanted to do. And this position at Farm Bureau came open, working with young farmers and ranchers, and applied, interviewed, and moved just an hour and a half away from Delaware and into DC to begin at Farm Bureau. And I've loved it. So I don't work on the policy side of things. I like to say my department works on the long-term health of the organization. So providing membership opportunities, leadership development programs, conferences like Fusion, which is coming up, and other things like that. And it's been great to learn and grow at Farm Bureau and continue to be a part of the Farm Bureau family from a logistics side and managing these programs and helping members have a great experience with Farm Bureau. So that's just a little bit about me.
Shelby, would you like to go next? Just telling us a little bit about your role at Farm Bureau.
Sure. So I'm an economist and got to that from working in a variety of positions and internships. When I started at Purdue, I was dead set on I was going to go run the Indiana State Fair. I started in marketing, which I think my coworkers would find ironic given my numbers career now. I don't have the creativity that marketing should. And learned that after my first summer internship. Sometimes internships are less about what you want to do and more about finding out what you don't want to do. And so the summer between my sophomore and junior year, Purdue has a summer agriculture policy internship program where they pay for your housing and kind of help facilitate your entire experience in Washington, D.C. And you go and get a job, whether it's on the Hill or with a trade association. Bless you, Allison. And so I ended up at NCFC, which their president and CEO is also a Purdue alum. So it was a really neat experience to go work under Mr. Connor and see how he runs his shop. He's a Lugar alum, which for Indiana policy junkies, that's a big deal. If you worked for Senator Lugar in the ag policy shop, there's a club of them, and it's an exclusive club and a neat one to be a part of. So I got to learn under him and came home from DC. I did not catch what they call the Potomac bug. I wasn't really into it as far as I wasn't going to do what David did. That takes a lot of guts to say, I'm just going to move to DC and figure it out. So I went back to Indiana and decided I was going to go to grad school in Ag Econ. I did the quantitative analysis concentration in my undergrad and had already done one thesis and decided to pursue that track. And at the same time too, I had an internship with Indiana Farm Bureau on their public policy team, and we were state lobbying and doing some of their political action committee work, and turned that into a full-time job right out of college. That as that progressed, had a number of different roles, but one of them was being the research arm of our Farm Bill task force that later turned into my thesis and kind of caught the eye of now my current boss. And just over a year ago, my boss now called me and said, hey, I need to fill another spot on my econ team. What do you think about moving you and your family out to DC? And so jumped at that chance because why not? I still got to stay in the Farm Bureau family. There was a lot of opportunities, and you're only young once. We don't have kids. And said, hey, let's go do it. And so that's how I ended up here. And I've been here a little over a year. My portfolio, I was at AFBF for 8 weeks before we went on COVID. Like, I think I've talked to Allison in person 3 times and we're on the same team. So it was a surreal experience. And what I was hired to do was crop markets. And I've done a lot of that as far as forecasting and monitoring supply and demand estimates and what the crops look like throughout the year, but it's transitioned a whole bunch into the sustainability space. And I primarily cover our entire private carbon and ecosystem credit market development sector and what that looks like from an economic development standpoint. And so that's how my job sits today.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. And then Allison, Director of Congressional Relations, what do you do?
So I guess day-to-day duties, my job is to make sure that, all of the policies that our grassroots members, work, through their counties and then through the state farm bureaus, and then eventually they make their way into our AFBF policy book. It is my job to make sure that, legislation coming before Congress or regulations coming out of the agencies. My job is to do the very best I can to have those regulations and bills align with our policies. So a lot of my day-to-day work is not only working with all of our state farm bureaus, but also working back and forth with other allied organizations like NCFC, where Shelby worked, and trying to build coalitions and have, all of these ag groups in town rally behind certain perspectives and viewpoints on legislation in order to shepherd it through Congress. Prior to the pandemic, a lot of that, was a lot of in-person meetings. We were on the Hill a lot. Obviously, that shifted to more virtual. So I guess how I ended up here, I worked on the Hill. Prior to being on the Hill, I worked for a lobbying firm, but I guess I got my start in DC was also through an internship. In my spring semester of my junior year, I interned for the House Ag Committee when Chairman Conaway came in for his very first Congress as chairman. So now he's since retired, but that was a great experience. I 100% got bit by the bug and was determined to come back to DC. A little bit like David, I was approaching graduation in May, and all my other friends who are pursuing careers not in politics already had their jobs lined up like in the first semester, and I was freaking out. Just knew I wanted to be in DC. Luckily, I was able to secure an internship with a trade association, the Corn Refiners Association, so still in the ag space. And that bought me some time and gave me a reason to tell mom and dad I was going to DC. And during my summer in DC, networked. The Russell Group, and the rest is history. Here I am now at Farm Bureau a few years later.
Awesome. Thank you all so much for sharing. You hinted at it a little bit, but the next thing we kind of wanted to dive into is how COVID specifically, either whether that's the transition online or how it's affected the programs you run or how you interact with commodity groups or other outside organizations. How have you seen COVID affect your role?
Who wants to take that one? I can start off if we want. So I think I was alluding to it a lot. So mostly, my day, I always joked, I was doing my job the best if I wasn't sitting in my office at AFBF. That meant I was out meeting with staffers for certain members, furthering our goals, trying to rally congressional support for those AFBF policies. So we shifting virtually. Obviously, all of those meetings now turn to phone calls and Zoom calls. I think at first there was definitely a learning curve. I think folks weren't really sure, like, do we turn on the camera? Do we not turn on the camera? What do we wear? Like, just crazy things like that. But when you're dealing with, Hill staffers who, aren't, maybe they have shared housing and, they can't maybe meet as freely and simulate an in-person meeting like you would, since they have their roommates sitting at the kitchen table with them. So, just trying to work creatively. I think we've had to maybe over communicate at times in order to compensate for the lack of an in-person experience. But I would say almost a year into this now, it seems to be business as usual. But I do miss the days of going on the Hill and meeting with people in person. A lot of it's relationship building and the small talk that happens before you get down to business, and you don't have quite as much of that now that we're virtual.
Yeah, I would say, so my job was supposed to be 90% travel, give or take, very similar to Allison. My boss and I kind of laid it out, and he said, my goal is for your calendar to be so booked that you're not in the office. You're flying to as many states that will call and say, we need a presentation, we need a market outlook, we need someone to come in and be an economic speaker for this. And I went to 4 places. I think I made it to at least 4 conferences ahead of COVID. And I'll never forget this. I do have to tell this story. I took vacation, I planned vacation the week after we went on work from home, and suddenly we're in COVID mode. And I still worked because you're not work from home, but we went to the beach because it was before all of that was really known. Mind you, it was Purdue spring break, which was part of the reason I went with family, all this stuff. And I'll never forget reading Mitch McConnell's first CARES Act by the pool, and just like, okay, this might be more serious than I'm giving it credit for, given what's in this bill. And we were on conference calls every single day that first week. And those have since then turned into, we have a conference call with presidents every other week. All the State Farm Bureau presidents who are considered our bosses get on a Zoom call. And believe it or not, farmers have not figured out Zoom quite yet. We still have some regular strugglers, but we get on a call every other week, and our president will host someone with knowledge of what's going on. So we've had anybody from undersecretaries from USDA to new administration officials, people who know the ins and outs of programs that were being stood up in record time as a response. Some really, I thought, really cool calls. I mean, I don't know if Allison really nerded out like I did on those, but just some like once in a lifetime experiences that you're in your pajamas listening to the undersecretary talk about CFAP assistance, or coronavirus food assistance program. And then we'll do a weekly phone call with our national affairs coordinators. Each State Farm Bureau has a staff person that manages their national affairs, and then they'll have state staff that manage other area portfolios. Like I was a former state lobbyist. And so we have a weekly call with them still, and I'm pretty sure they're gonna wanna keep that even when we're back in the office. Because what would normally happen was that you're in your office, and if you're there and a state staffer happened to be in town for something, they wanted to sit down and talk your ear off, or they're like leaving their luggage in your office or whatever. And so I think all of this will still continue in that new, very different camaraderie, because you had to build it virtually. But I don't know, I feel like I've gotten to know people in a different way because of it too.
I would definitely echo that, right? Like you're seeing people in their element, in their homes, like you're getting to know them and their families to some extent. A part of the role that I have is working with the AFBF Young Farmers and Ranchers Committee, and they're volunteer leaders. They're around the country, farming and ranching, and in addition to raising corn and beef, they're raising their kids too. So they have full plates and are still willing to give up their time. And so a lot of my role revolves around managing that committee while also planning out conferences, the competitive events you might see at annual convention, Fusion, like I mentioned, coming up, Collegiate Farm Bureau programming, like the mini grants and the social media ambassador program. And so a lot of that requires people to be gathering in person and having that networking happen, like Shelby was talking about and Allison mentioned as well. And so when COVID hit, we were on the ground in Louisville, Kentucky, days away from the opening general session of the 2020 Yfnr Leadership Conference. And so we planned for months to make sure that this was going to happen and go off without a hitch. And as we're in Louisville, we start seeing headlines, kind of like Shelby's talking about, just by the pool later on, like seeing how serious this is. And we saw an article about a member of the clergy who had traveled to DC and had served communion and spread COVID. It was the first super spreader event that we saw. And where did he travel from? He traveled from Louisville, Kentucky. And what hotel was he staying at? Oh yes, it was the hotel we were hosting the Yfnr Leadership Conference at. And so we hop on the phone with the leadership team, shut it all down, book flights for the next day to go home. And yeah, I went straight back to Delaware, lived out of a suitcase, and continued to hop on Zoom and try to make things happen. And we pulled off a 10-day, 4 hours worth of content a day, a Yfnr Leadership Conference just on Zoom. And looking back, I would not say that was a conference. I would say it was just a bunch of meetings strung together. But we put out something. And we tried, and I think that that's a lot of what we've seen in trying to build in networking components virtually, trying to host meetings and events virtually is the effort and the willingness to try new things. And while I was home, one of the things that I got the chance to do was help out as a volunteer with our youth ministry. And obviously that was all online as well. And one thing that I noted from our youth pastor was that he was always coming up with new ideas, whether it was blasting music at the beginning of the night or making people do dance parties or delivering things personally to people's houses while things were happening, surprising people. And we've been, as silly as it sounds, with a lot of the events that we're trying to put on virtually, those are some elements that I've taken and used, whether it's starting a session with music playing to make people feel welcomed or included or having a good time, delivering boxes to the first 550 Farm Bureau members who register for Fusion Reimagine Conference to make their conference experience more real. Trying and putting effort in and trying to incorporate the element of fun that that normally happens with an in-person event has been a lot of how my role has changed with COVID. I've quickly become the Zoom expert on our team. I didn't know that that would be something that I would want to do or have interest in, but been able to have a lot of fun figuring out how to make things happen and help connections take place and to put on events and still do the programming that we wanted to do, but just in a virtual world. And so there's been a lot of changes, but I think like Shelby mentioned, some of those will persist as we go back into in-person gatherings and some will thankfully die and pass away as well. So lots of changes, but there's still work to be done and there's still work that's being done and it's purposeful work. So I'm really thankful for the chance to still do that and to see the Farm Bureau family still thrive even in a virtual world.
Awesome, thank you guys so much. Also, members, remember if you have any questions for our panelists, you can drop those in the comment on our Instagram post about this meeting. Panelists, our next question for you is, what COVID-related program do you think has been the most innovative or has had the biggest impact in the shortest amount of time?
What do you mean by program? Because I immediately thought a USDA program.
Farm Bureau program, government program, anything that would impact the work that you do.
I don't know if you want me to bore you with like the details of PPP or if Shelby can come talk about CFAP. That's what pops into my mind. I think we just had our AFBF conference went virtual and I can't take any credit for that. I'm sure David can talk more about that, but I think, the whole show that was put on there, the program there were like all these different components within the virtual convention platform that were really meaningful. And you could we had this one thing, it didn't maybe pan out how it should, but I actually sat on a Zoom call for and it was just an open room and had members wanted, they could have just popped in and chatted, and it was meant to simulate our AFBF booth at convention. So I think all of that was very interesting, but I think as far as programming and how things have shifted in this time, one thing that we did at the convention was we made sure that we had a live program with a Washington update. And I think we had more folks watch that and attend that in the virtual setting than we ever do when we have, actual in-person workshops at our convention. So I think that was a really good learning point for us that however we, function moving forward for our convention programming, there needs to be some way that at least some of these workshops and some of this information can get to folks in a virtual setting who can't be there in person.
You beat us by a few people. We also had a session similar. I think for us in the econ team, when we first went through, I'd say the first 6 months, we were running some numbers, shocker. we had over, like within the first 3 months of COVID, had over 40 presentations and webinars that we had gotten pulled into. And so I think it was cool that we were still able to do the job that we're supposed to as far as getting out and sharing the information and doing presentations. And we quickly learned the virtual format, and we joked that like we have our preferences now, like we prefer this venue over this venue, this recorder over this recorder. We're still able to do our RFD TV segment, although we did just decide we're not going to go back on camera until we're back in the office. That is one that we're like, if we can call in, let's just keep that simple. So I think for us still being able to deliver the information that we're asked to do has been good, but I think overall too, we've just done it at such a quick pace, and the amount of information and content that we're generating from an economics shop. And we have a piece of a website that we publish. I mean, originally, I feel like the expectation was one piece of content every couple days or so when the issues are really strong and we need to be putting information out there and keeping it fresh. Now we'll probably put 2 or 3 out a week, and some of us will do 2 a week. And especially through, Allison mentioned CFAP, that is like my career highlight, that I was able to put together some of the numbers of that program. I think USDA beats me though in their career highlights, because they stood up that program within like 2 months. And for government, that's amazing that they were able to do something like that. So I think just the ability to still do your job, but actually find a way to do it better and serve an audience in a more enhanced way.
Yeah, really quickly, do you want to explain what CFAP is?
CFAP is the Coronavirus Food Assistance Program that was launched in the first coronavirus aid package. They have since then done 2 and 3 renditions. It's the direct payments that farmers received. When you look at the first round, the payments that went out to certain producers, Allison and I worked together to expand the pool of producers, because I'll use mushrooms as an example because the mushroom one was fascinating. But when you have mushroom producers that need to get their products from where they're growing to a restaurant, but the restaurant's not open to buy it, and they can't get the processor in place because of all the COVID lockdowns. Yes, they were essential, but there were still barriers in place. They essentially lost a complete crop. And so the package that was put together was an attempt to compensate those producers at least to 80% or more of where we saw all the volatility and price drops. And so that's the short and sweet. Go to our market intel page for more information.
What Shelby's not telling y'all is that it was her economic analysis that really made all the justification for USDA. So it was her good analysis that got us all that coverage for our farmers and a broad range of producers.
Yeah, I don't know if I can top that, honestly. We've done some good things within our program. I'm thinking like Farm Bureau specific. One thing that comes to mind is Yfnr Connect, which is a monthly call that any young farmer and rancher can join. There's half of it is a professional development opportunity with a speaker or presenter, and half of it is splitting into breakout rooms with prompts and reflection questions and getting to know folks from around the country. And we've seen great success with repeat attendees and folks that are craving that networking component they're not getting because they're sitting at home. And so that's been a really cool way to pivot a little bit and I think reflect on what the overall mission is and the work that we do. So it's nice to see feedback from that, both positive and constructive, for how to continue. And I'm excited to see how it'll shift when we're able to still meet and make those connections in person. I'd also like to shout out our conventions team. Annual convention, I think, rocked. It was great. so many different components to take advantage of. And I think what we heard again and again from the Yfnr competitors was that many of them wouldn't have been able to compete had it been an in-person event. And so folks were expecting within the next month or two, or their significant others were, and would not have been able to travel in order to compete in the event, or they had kids at home or couldn't get away from the farm. And so it was great to see those folks who might not have been able to experience it otherwise really engaged in the event and even winning those contests. So that was definitely an eye opener and a mood booster, and something that's like a vision that's pooling the work that we continue to do in a virtual world.
Yeah, it's really great to see the way that Farm Bureau has adapted. I competed in one of the contests at Young Farmers and Ranchers, and it was incredible, awesome experience. I really loved it. And then what you, Shelby, and Allison were kind of mentioning too, the American Farm Bureau Convention, nothing else has even come close. Like, the platform was awesome. It went so well. So it has been cool from a student perspective to see how Farm Bureau is adapting to all of these things. Something else, we just had another question come in from a student, and it is, what advice do you have for a freshman who is trying to make the most of their time at university?
I think just generally, it's good advice to put yourself out there and try new things, whether that's a club or applying for an internship you don't necessarily feel qualified for but are really interested in. I think there are plenty of opportunities out there if you start looking. And I think along with that, bring someone along with you, whether that's a peer or you meet a professor that you really enjoyed their teaching style or aligned with the research that they did or the course that they were teaching. Bring along a peer or a mentor with you in that journey as you're trying to make the most of your time, because ultimately those connections will help you as you move through college and after you graduate.
I think I'll jump in. For my college experience, I think what really helped make it whole, my freshman year, I had learned about the Hokies on the Hill internship. And I went and asked my advisor about it. I went to the informational session, knowing that probably as a freshman, that wasn't something that I could do. But because of that planning, we were able to facilitate all of my classes, so that semester I could only be doing poli-sci work and I could just be focused on that. So if you have some sort of internship goal that maybe, takes up a semester, makes you have to go somewhere else for a semester, I would encourage you to work with your advisor and develop a plan that enables you to be able to, to take part in that internship without having to take a victory lap, unless you want to take a victory lap, in which case go for it too. But that was really beneficial to me, that I could go intern on the Hill and it didn't, delay my graduation.
I always give this advice because I wish I would have listened to it more. Don't be afraid to have fun and don't take yourself so seriously. I think, and I love Purdue. I've been a Boilermaker my whole life. We're all Boilermakers at our house, and it's a big deal. But Purdue has this way about them that makes it so competitive. And that, Allison kind of mentioned this too, that everybody else has an internship and you have this pressure to feel like you have to, and it's okay to loosen up and figure it out and have some fun, and you never know what comes along and how it works. And I think I had more fun, just hanging out with people and talking about what was going on in their lives or what was going on in class than we did, trying to get to our goals. And frankly, some of those people that I would consider as part of the group of us that we all took ourselves too seriously and should have had more fun, a lot of them got the internship that they wanted, spent some time in the workforce, and now that they have a family down, they've stepped away. male and female. And so what you want at 20 might be different what you want at 27, but those years together are really important, and you should be having fun while you do it.
Awesome. Thank you guys for that insight. So a question we got on our Instagram was advice for how to act professionally over a virtual platform. Many of us are going to have internships this summer that are going to have virtual aspects to it. So how can we prepare for that, and what have you found to be successful working virtually?
Whoever is making you,
Go ahead, Shelby.
I was gonna say, whoever is making these the interviewers stand up and see if you're dressed. I don't know if you've heard this. Someone told me that they've had interviewers make you guys stand up on a Zoom so that they can see that your pants are professional and your shirt's professional. And I can remember a meeting Allison and I had where we were both like, don't judge me, I have no makeup on, my hair's up in a bun, and we're just trying to make it through the day. So don't do that, but I'll let Allison give her advice now.
Well, first of all, I'm wearing leggings right now, so don't make me stand up. I think right now, obviously everyone's sort of figuring out like what that is. We'll log on to a meeting with, 60 people, and there will be someone in a hoodie. There will be someone in a tie. I think for an interview, I would probably, make sure you wear a blazer and all of that. But I think one thing to be mindful of is your background. I have heard stories of folks that, y'all are in college, maybe there's like a beer light up sign behind you. You don't think anything of it. You see it every day. Probably not what you want during your interview, even if that's where your desk is. So I honestly, every time I have like a big Zoom call, I open up the window first, make sure that like what the camera is seeing is everything that I want projected, and that like the lighting isn't completely awful. I think all of those are good tips. It's just, we're in a strange environment, but yeah, make sure, that the background's good. If you have pets, try to keep them out. I've also been on meetings with our staff, and my dog has made some very odd sounds in them. But that would be probably my big advice.
Yeah, I think those are great tips. I don't really have much to add. Just, it's okay to check ahead of time too, like to get clarity on what to expect. If you're going into the office, you would probably have that clarity on a daily basis. But since you're working from home, meetings and audiences that you're meeting with change so frequently that I think it's okay to ask, just to clarify, to be sure everyone's on the same page.
I'm blatantly guilty of this, but it's something I'm working on. Because you're virtual, it's easy to have everything scripted out in front of you. And I have been guilty of reading my script while presenting and then getting a note in the Teams chat of, hey, did you script that out? Sounds really scripted. Yes, I did. So bullet points are great. Have your resume in front of you. Just maybe you don't need to script everything in your entire life.
Well, thank you all so much for that input. I think we're going to go ahead and wind down. But the question to kind of round us out that I thought would be good for our audience to hear is we're still in a Collegiate Farm Bureau meeting right now. So if you had to recommend one step for someone to take to get more involved in Farm Bureau right now, what would that be?
Go sign up for the Politico Morning Ag Report. When I came back from DC, I read it every single day while I was still at Purdue. And you stay in the know, you know players, you know what's going on, and it keeps you plugged in so that I know David has advice on how to get involved in Farm Bureau more specifically, that it'll help you carry into his advice.
Yeah, I was just going to give like general advice. You don't have to be in a specific leadership position to be involved. And y'all officers have probably noticed this, like a really engaged member is just as valuable, if not more valuable, than someone who's in an officer position. Like, you can have your core team, but you can also have those people that lead committees. And the same thing happens when you continue involvement in a county farm bureau or on a state Yfnr committee. There's going to be many people who have skill sets that you can utilize, even if they're not pursuing that leadership position. And so I think seek involvement from everybody. And if you're that member, don't always feel pressured to pursue a leadership position, but still remain involved and be a good supporter of those in leadership as well.
I would say ditto on political ag. That's also my word of advice to anyone who's thinking about, just wanting to stay in the know, or maybe you want to pursue a career in ag. That's a good thing to read each day just to stay in the loop. As far as getting more involved in Farm Bureau, I think something that President Duvall often says is you have to get outside of your fence rows. And I think of that from, a policy angle. It's really easy to go talk to members who have, experience in agriculture and who have a really rural district. They get on board pretty quickly. But what is more challenging is, to explain to those maybe more urban and suburban members who are very removed from agriculture, why the work that we're doing is important and why we need a certain law passed to help out the ag industry, to help out farmers and ranchers. So I think one thing that I would encourage y'all to do, and I was not as good about this in college, I stayed in my ag bubble and always talked ag with my ag friends. I did not prioritize talking about these issues with my non-ag friends. So all my friends in, pre-nursing, they had no idea what was going on in the ag world. So I think it's really important to kind of share your interest in agriculture with friends, not only that have that interest, but also try to work it into those other friend groups not as involved.
That's good. I think last plug, Fusion Reimagine Conference is coming up. This is a very practical way to get involved. Registration is free. It's March 11th to the 13th. Collegiate Discussion Meet is happening. The opening rounds are happening a couple days before that. And so you can go on fbi.org into the events tab to register. And there's also a chance to be a social media ambassador throughout Fusion. So get on that application if you're interested, and continue to utilize the knowledge that you're gaining from reading those Politico ads, getting really involved in policy, and taking all the advice that Shelby and Allison have given today.
And David, we are plugging the conference, so we will have the link available to everyone and encourage you to register for that.
Yeah, we want to go ahead and thank you guys. This was awesome. Sitting down as an officer team, getting ready to plan this, what we really wanted was be able to show students the breadth, the depth, and the diversity that American Farm Bureau has to offer. And you guys very clearly did that for us today. Gave some great insight, and it really has been incredible to have you here. So at this point, we're going to kind of wrap up the panel portion. Yeah, Becca gave a clap. So if everyone could kind of give some reactions, maybe throw some stuff in the chat box. Thank you guys so much for being here. This really was awesome. So at this point, you all are welcome to stay. We're going to conclude with the rest of our meeting. You guys are welcome to stay. You can leave your cameras on. If you have to head out, that's okay too. Is there anything else that any of you would like to say before we get ready to go about our meeting? Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much. That concludes our panel, and we're going to go ahead and keep going with our meeting.
All right. Again, thank you, the three of you, for joining us and taking your time out of your evening. We really appreciate it. And I think this went really well. I think it went exactly how we had hoped it would. Yeah, again, thank you. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen again and have our presentation back up, and we'll work through the business portion of our meeting and finish out the rest of this. So just kind of moving into basically our new business for our first meeting of the spring semester. I do want to kind of give the opportunity for officer reports. So we're going to hear from the Ag Policy Committee briefly, but then if there are any other committees that have anything they want to say, that will be an option. Do we have anything to say? to share at all, or just?
We did start a YouTube, and we have I believe that's what the link is for. We kind of did a podcast just contrasting some of the policy around Biden and Trump administration and how that would be affecting agriculture. So if anyone's interested, that's what that link is about. And then if anyone that's here is also interested in maybe working with us to do some sort of policy podcast, it can really be over anything. I know I've used it for a lot of applications. So if anyone's interested in that, they can reach out to me. I'm sure Hannah will be still be on it. Brooke and Kendra are also on it as well. So if you're interested, check out the link, and not too much else to report on that.
Okay. Yeah, for those of you who are new in the club, our policy basically newsletter was something that got created last year, and a lot of work's been put into that. It's been a really interesting opportunity within our chapter, I think. So if anybody that hasn't had a chance to hear about that or is interested in that, please contact Grace.
And also just a comment on the YouTube channel, that will be where we're posting the meeting recordings. So if you have to miss a meeting or want to rewatch the panel, you can head to that YouTube channel and catch those.
Is there anything else committee-wise, anything else need to be said? No? Okay, I will go ahead and move ahead. As David mentioned a few times, the Fusion Conference is coming up here in March. So this is an awesome opportunity for Collegiate Farm Bureau members, but also for young farmers. It is technically our Young Farmers and Ranchers national convention is what this is, but every few years it is called a Fusion Conference because they bring together not only the young farmers but also the women's leaders group and the policy groups that come together and kind of have this big national conference during the spring. And it's an awesome opportunity when it's in person, but I can guarantee you it's going to be also an awesome opportunity this year being virtual. They've put a lot of work into it, as David said, upgrading it for this year as well. Becca, if you have any input you want to put into this, as well as the ambassador opportunity, you know more about that. So I'll let you speak on that, really.
Yeah, I encourage everyone to take advantage of this opportunity because Fusion usually is an event like Justin mentioned where we travel. There's a registration cost, and this year it is totally free. If you're in the first number of attendees to submit your registration, you will be receiving a free gift from American Farm Bureau Federation. There'll be a lot of great breakouts similar to some of their other conferences you may have attended with the National Farm Bureau Convention and things like that. So I just really encourage you to look into this. I know it's virtual, but an easy way to hear some different speakers and some different thoughts from all across the United States. The other piece that Justin mentioned about the ambassadors program, really neat for Fusion. As we are in this virtual world, they are looking for applications for to be an ambassador for the Fusion Conference. So in a nutshell, you'd use your social media platform and your connections to really highlight Fusion Conference leading up to it. During the conference, you're really going to be that individual that's spreading that word on social media. I've shared with Justin and Tyson as well the application, a little bit more in-depth details about it. I don't want to get too into the weeds, but if you're interested, I highly recommend you looking at that information and thinking about applying.
Yeah. So for both of those, the link that's on the screen for the app to register for the conference, as well as more information about the ambassador opportunity and the application for that, we're going to provide both of those in a follow-up email after the meeting. So if you have questions about it or you want to look into it into more details as far as that goes, that'll be provided. But let any of us know if you have any questions. Again, like I said, Fusion Conference, it's a really good opportunity. There's a lot of great stuff that comes out of it. Really is just a National Farm Bureau Conference that's focused to young farmers and those of us in our age range. So go ahead and move on. We wanted to bring up, Ag Week, as many of you know, is a great opportunity for clubs and organizations within the College of Ag at Purdue. And it is coming up in April. And from what I understand, there's going to be in-person and virtual options this year. We missed out last spring, didn't get to have an in-person week. And so this year they are working on providing basically in-person opportunities. This is something that we would like to put out. We are going to have more conversations about it as an officer team, as well as with our advisors, but we wanted to kind of put it out there to our members. Traditionally, our chapter has done a pancake breakfast. That's been what we've offered during Ag Week. We've kind of talked about it. While that's probably not the greatest idea during COVID, probably isn't even going to be an approved idea if we even try to do it. Not really sure on the details of that yet. But what we really wanted to do was just let everybody know that this is something that we're talking about. And if anybody has any ideas or opinions about what we might do as a chapter for Ag Week, whether we change it up, whether we do something in person, whether we do something virtually, we are open to different ideas from any of our members. If you have them now, feel free to speak up and put it out there. We'd love to have the engagement. But even if after the meeting, if you have something and you want to shoot us an email or even just mention it to us in some other way, we'd love to get opinions or different ideas as far as what we might want to do as a club during Ag Week this year. Does anybody have any ideas that they'd like to put out right now? Or opinions about it, whether we do stuff in person or virtually?
If doing something in person is a possibility, I think it would be good to try and plan something in person, because I think a lot of us really are scratching to do that sort of thing, and we could maybe create a backup option if that doesn't work. I do agree that we probably should steer away from food possibly, but I think we could find some sort of cool, unique way to still advertise our organization at the week.
Yeah, I kind of think we got a similar opinion of that when we were talking about it as a team. I actually, Becca, if you want to answer this for me real quick, it's something that we'd kind of thought of was in an in-person opportunity, would we be able to get kind of things to hand out if we had a booth or something during Ag Week?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
We have lots of things that we could utilize. Also, on that note of food, if you do end up trying to do something food related, I would try and make sure they're individually wrapped, things like that. Pancake breakfast might not be the best option, but if you wanted to do something in regard to the commodities grown in Indiana or something like that, you could find a way to do them individually wrapped. But just a thought.
Okay. All right. If anybody else has any other thoughts, feel free to throw it in the chat if you want to, or shoot us an email afterwards. It will be something we'll be talking about in the next coming weeks as we kind of plan this and figure out what we want to do as a chapter. But we love the input from our members. You are really the voice of our group, and you will be the ones involved with Ag Week. So we want to make sure we're doing what everybody wants to do with that week, I should say. One thing I want to mention as well before we do finish up is just kind of the concept behind our membership. As I do know, we are having some new members coming in. Even some of you who are freshmen, you've only had a semester of our meetings on Zoom, so it's been a little confusing. But the concept behind our dues, we should say, a lot of clubs have a dues that they pay at the beginning of the year. We don't necessarily do that in the same fashion as a lot of other clubs because we are a part of Indiana Farm Bureau and we work under that state group. And so all that we ask is that you pay for or become a student member through Indiana Farm Bureau. That is a $15 fee for the year. So if you haven't done that already, that's something you can easily do online, or if you have any struggles with that, just ask one of us. It's a really easy process to do. You are officially an Indiana Farm Bureau member, so that comes with all the benefits that a Farm Bureau member gets. You can do that within your home county if you're from Indiana. If you're not from Indiana, you're able to do that just through Tippecanoe County is usually how we have people do that. But again, like I said, that's $15 for the year. You get tons of opportunities being a member. Hopefully, if we get the opportunity to have in-person meetings again in the future, maybe we'll be able to have food again. Used to be we had Chick-fil-A every meeting, and that paid for it right there. But also opportunities like Fusion Conference, going to DC in the fall, different trips, different tours that we go on, things like that. That pays for that whole year's worth, for the most part, in trips and events that we do as a club.
Super quick, Justin. I don't want to take much time, but I do want to mention just we are looking into taking that DC trip in September. I know this past year we weren't able to go because of COVID, but we are working to be able to take that trip. And so as I learn more information, I'll be sharing that application process with you all because we will be gathering those applications before the end of this semester.
Okay, awesome. That is a really good opportunity, amazing trip. So if anybody has the chance to apply for that, once we get more information on it, I highly recommend that. So, does anybody have any questions, comments before we kind of start to wrap up here?
If you're not already following our social media, please go follow us on Instagram. So trying to push out lots of information and updates there. So I can put the name of that in the chat as well. Okay, just a reminder.
Anything else at all?
I would just like to say thank you to the like the members that came that weren't on exec. This ended up being, the panel was awesome, but it did definitely take longer than I thought it was going to. So thanks for like sticking around for the meeting. And I think we'll talk about this on the next slide, but if you guys fill out a survey just to say kind of what you want to see for the year, like what we did here, then we have a $10 Chick-fil-A gift card and you 4 get to be in on it. So one of you 4 gets a $10 Chick-fil-A gift card if you fill out the survey.
It has been purchased. Once we get all of the responses, I think probably give you guys a couple weeks. We'll randomly select a winner and I will notify you and mail you the gift card.
One last thing, I promise, like I've mentioned many times, Farm Bureau has lots of resources. So if anyone is interested, on Monday evening, our young farmer and ag professionals will be hosting their advocacy webinar. They're going to have a lot of awesome guest speakers to talk about some different things, even similar to what Grace mentioned about the new administration and how that affects agriculture and rural communities. So if anyone is interested in that, I can share the link with Justin, and he can send that out to all of you, but just wanted to let you know about that.
Thank you. All right. Again, please fill out the survey. We really appreciate those of you who are able to make it. I know a few people had to leave. So, please just spread the word. We will be working on planning out our future meetings for the semester, and we'll get word out as soon as we know, what those are going to look like. But like I said, any information from this meeting, we're going to make sure and get it sent out as a follow-up email. As well as the meeting was recorded. So if you know anybody that wanted to come but it wasn't able to, they're able to go out there and watch the panel and get that information that they missed out on this evening. So if there's no other comments from anybody, I would say I think that's pretty well what we had to say tonight. Is there anything else? All righty. Well, again, thank you everybody for coming. I think this went really well. And we look forward to seeing you next month, whenever we do figure out when our next meeting will be. So thank you, everybody.